welcome home. It's Irish Family History with curious news and notes, celebrating our 4th year of this podcast at the Irish Roots Cafe, where every day's a holiday and there's always room for one more. One of 6 broadcast series from the head school at irishroots.com. I'm Mike OLaughlin, your host, publisher of rare Irish books and information on every county in Ireland since 1978. Be sure to read our blog, complete with links to click on from this podcast, and search our master index and books for free. Molly, wet the tea, Katie, bar the door, Sweeney, clear that floor, and bring out the Irish dancers. It's time we get this show on the road. Well, welcome to the Irish Roots Cafe, and we've got a repeat guest here. Some of you will remember Bill, who was on, at least a couple of months ago, hadn't it been, Bill?
Yeah, it was back in July.
Back in July, and we talked about this great success you had in researching your ancestors. I think that was Sligo, Roscommon, was it Leitrim?
Yes, all 3 of those. It was really a lot of fun meeting the local people and meeting some cousins as well.
So if anybody, I'll post on the show notes a link to that podcast if anybody wants to go back and see those experiences. But Bill had another thing that he knows something about the best way possible, and that's by doing it yourself, and that's Irish citizenship. So today we're going to sort of meander around, and we'll get right to it too, but we want to get the feel for how do you go about getting Irish citizenship in the easiest way. And what are some of the websites to go to, and maybe a term or two that you haven't heard about, like on some documents. So when it comes up, you feel real comfortable. Would you say, Bill, is there any one thing that was the hardest for you when you put this together, trying to do it?
Not really. It's pretty straightforward if you've got the right information. But I would say the biggest thing is overcoming the notion that it will take 18 months or more, maybe 21 months to complete this process. And most people just say, oh, forget it, it's too long. But I'm one of those people that say, well, I'll start it, and I intend to live that long, so I'll get there. I think that's the major hurdle.
Well, and even if it takes 12 months, 14 months, whatever it happens to be, it's not like you're sitting down writing it on a piece of paper every day for each one of those months trying to get things done. You have a lot of wait time, don't you?
Absolutely. I did the 2 steps. I did the citizenship, which is registering me in the foreign birth registry. And when that was done, I did a passport application. And really, those are the only 2 things you have to initiate formally through the process there, besides gathering your information to be able to submit the applications. But you do get that impatience of checking now, why don't I have it yet? When was that I submitted it? And, but time does pass, and there you go. It comes in.
Well, let's break that down and make it real simple. Foreign Births Registry. Now, where do you get the paper to fill out for that, and exactly what do you tell them on that form?
Yeah, so there's a link that we can put in the notes for this blog entry, but you can go to the Embassy of Ireland, and they call it FBR.
Right.
It's Citizenship Through Foreign Births Registration. And you actually send your form to your local consulate. So in my case, it was in New York City. And they register you there at the local consulate. And in order to do this, you really only have to prove one grandparent was born in Ireland.
Okay, and that's part of that form. When you turn it in, you have to prove that one grandparent came from Ireland.
Yes, and you have to have 3 forms of proof.
Okay, now give us some examples of those forms of proof, both what you used and what maybe somebody else could use that you didn't have.
I think what's pretty typical, and it first is required, I believe, is the long form birth certificate of the person born in Ireland. And I have a link in there as well where you go for that. And you can request that via fax or call over to Ireland in the county, and they'll look that up for you. You fill out a little form that says the dates and the information about their parents, and they'll look it up. And as long as you know where they're from, you ought to be able to get that long form birth certificate. That's the biggest thing. That might cost about $15 dollars or so, maybe $20.
Now, are you going through Dublin to get that, or are you going through the county? in
You go
Ireland.
through in a county or a nearby county. Like, so let's say, for instance, I went through Roscommon, and they give you that information on the application where you can go for this for your official birth certificate. And you get the long form, not the short form.
Okay, okay, good. And now this is probably be good. Well, mainly for 1864 and after, but I imagine quite a few places will go back to say maybe 1820.
Yeah, and it's only to your grandparents, so you're probably stretching it if you have someone who was born in 1820.
That's right. Well, I'm just thinking of when you come up and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't find any record," but I know they were from there from other documents like a writings or a family Bible or a newspaper or some other government document might say they're there, but they can't find a birth form.
Yeah, that's the toughest part of the process. If you know where they're from and you can locate this birth certificate, you're on your way. That's
Okay.
you have to nail that down, and then you're on your way. And what I used for the other two forms was the marriage certificate in the U.S. Both my grandparents came over separately from Ireland around 1903, 1905. And so I used their marriage certificate in the US and I used the death certificate in the US. So I only had one form of ID from Ireland. That was the long form birth certificate.
Now, where do you find a merit certificate?
Well, I knew they were from Providence, Rhode Island, and I
Mm-hmm.
went to the Office of Vital Records and I got a certified copy of the marriage and the death certificates. And in fact, I got what's called an apostille, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is a separate letter that validates the information from the Vital Records Office. And so every state should have an Office of Vital Records where you can get that.
So, and yeah, when you get these records, just in sort of a general thing, you want to make sure it's an official record, and I assume it would have to be notarized or be stamped, official by somebody in the government.
That's right. That you ask for a certified copy, and they'll do this. They'll either give you an embossed seal or this apostille thing, which is a separate letter that validates what it is.
Gotcha. Now, so that's the foreign birth registration, citizenship through foreign birth registration. Is there anything more to know about that, or do you have any other little tips?
Yes. Well, I ended up. You have to have your own information. And
Right.
I got that notarized at my local bank, my passport and my driver's license and a utility bill to prove I live where I say I'm living. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had my parents' information. And I forget offhand if I had to have all three for them or not, but I went at this in overkill mode. So
Yes.
I used both grandparents because my grandfather actually, his information spelled Sweeney a little differently than I, Sweeny instead of EY. So I thought, well, I'll do both he and my grandmother. And then I have my father's information, same thing, birth certificate, marriage and death certificate. And then I had my own passport information and utility bill and driver's license. You package that all together on a fairly straightforward form, basically identifying what I just said. And you have someone prove it's you when you fill it out, which was also really interesting. One of the choices that can vouch for you is a priest, a parish priest. So I went down the road here to my parish priest, and they put their stamp on it and vouched that I truly was Bill Sweeney sending this information in.
Yeah, that's one more layer of protection you've got, so to speak, to get this paperwork through. Now, did you find that the folks in Ireland knew that a name could be spelled more than one way?
Yeah, that in my other genealogy work, it's something that really frustrated me because I'm just a very detailed oriented person. And when I've been to Ireland, it's nothing to them. I have Sweeney, EY, no EY. I have Brennan, ANEN. I've got another relative in the family, McPherson, MAC. Nobody cares over there. They say, yeah, everyone can spell their name a couple of ways.
That's
But
right.
to me, it was a big deal until I guess I've finally gotten used to it. But when I was building my family tree recently, and I asked a cousin of mine, John McPherson, I said, well, what do I use, MAC or MC? And he says, well, my grandfather's birth certificate says MC, so you may as well use that.
Yes, that's the way. Well, and that coming out of the Irish language, there was no official way to spell it. These names or the Gaelic language, Scotch Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, there wasn't really an official way to spell it. So that leads to a more of a cavalier attitude in countries where the language has been changed so radically overnight, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. It's really just completely casual. It doesn't bother them in the least. And I was afraid of that, putting in the form without the exact same spelling, but it probably didn't matter at all. But just in case, I put in both grandparents.
Yeah, that's very good. Now let's assume you've got that citizenship through foreign birth registration or the FBR filled out, done, and then you mail it away to where?
Your closest consulate. So I sent mine to New York City, and you send them the fee, which at the time when I did it in early 2006 was $178. Plus, you had to add $15 money order so they could send it back to you. So you just look from that same instructions website about the process. They'll tell you where your closest consulate is.
And so that's the Irish consulate. I know what. Oh, they've got several in the United States. The biggest that I know of course, are New York and Chicago and Boston, maybe St. Louis. I can't remember. There's quite a few of them, though. You can find it just by typing in on the internet on a search for Irish consulate, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then you literally just mail it to them. Although it's got such important documents in it, you do a special overnight instead of just regular mail. But it's as simple as that.
And so that's really the whole thing in a nutshell. It's that one form being filled out correctly with supporting documents on your family.
Right, and then about 3 months later, I received an acknowledgement that I was in the system. They received it. They gave me back my records. And then 1 year after acknowledging it, I received my certificate for the foreign birth registry.
Now, if a person, you said you sent them your passport, would that be a copy of your passport?
I believe I had to send them maybe it was on the passport, the next step, the European passport. I don't think I had to send them my real passport in this step.
Gotcha. So now okay. So we've sent it in. It's been 3 months, and they send you recognition
and a return of my original documents.
Okay, and then what happens?
And then you just sit and wait. And then it was 1 year from that point to when they sent me the foreign birth registry certificate.
So that was just waiting. You didn't have to do anything during that time.
No, most of the work is up front, getting the records all assembled to put the application in. After that, it's really nothing.
So it's not, you don't have to appear before a bunch of courts and hire people and research for a year straight. It's really that one form. That's what you got to do, and then you have to wait.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good. That's narrowing it down. It's making it a lot simpler. Any other attitudes from the people you dealt with? Did they like what you were doing, or were they blasé? Or I guess you didn't have to deal with that many people, did you?
No, not really. I did call over to Roscommon to make sure I was in the right place to get the right type of birth certificate that was required. But really, that was the only time I spoke to someone on the phone. I just followed the instructions, got all my records together, and sent it in to the consulate.
And now, of course, you're very detailed, so you didn't have anything bounce back on you. They didn't say, could you furnish more information for a particular point? It just passed.
Right. And I overkilled it with two different people, but correct. There was nothing I did after I submitted it in February of 2006 until I received the certificate in May of 2007.
Okay, so now you have your certificate. What does that mean?
Well, that means you're an Irish citizen, and the U.S. allows dual citizenship between the U.S. and Ireland. They don't allow that with every country.
Right.
So that's really doesn't mean much, because unless you're a resident in Ireland, you can't vote in their elections. It's kind of a novelty. I embarked on this process really. My father died in 2005, and I started to think more about family history, and there was no one to ask any longer. And so I thought, gee, I'm going to really start pursuing getting all the information on my family tree. And then in a dinner conversation one time, someone said, you could become an Irish citizen. And that sent me in from that dinner conversation on the track of getting it done.
Yes, that's pretty good. And I think even, now it's the furthest this really goes back easily is to your grandparent, correct?
Yeah, and I've looked at trying to find loopholes for my kids, because if you're only allowed, once you become a citizen, then any children you have born after that are automatically citizens. But all three of my kids were born prior to that. and I've looked for a great grandparent loophole or something on the timing, and I've found nothing that'll help my kids out.
Yeah, I think there used to be a great grandparent, and I think they might have gotten too many applications. They took that out and made it grandparent.
Yeah.
But way back when, it used to be you could do that on great grandparent.
Yeah. So once you become a citizen of Ireland, you are a citizen of the European Union.
Boy, oh boy. So then what did you do with what you had?
Yeah. So fundamentally, though, it's good because as a citizen of the EU, you can work in any European country that's a member. So you
Mhm.
are truly a citizen there. And I decided I wanted to get a passport because having a passport is really convenient when you're traveling through Europe, having that EU passport.
Oh, yeah, it makes it much quicker, doesn't it?
Oh, you can go into Heathrow Airport and look at the line of about 300 people and go right around it to a line of about 10 or 20 people on the EU line.
Yeah, very nice.
Yes, and in fact, I just went to Brazil recently, and Brazil does not require a visa for European citizens, but they do require it for U.S. citizens. So I
Oh.
would have had to pay $130 and go through a process for a visa from the U.S. Instead, I just entered under my EU passport.
Now, who and where did you apply for the passport?
So it's actually an Irish passport.
Right.
So that you have to apply through Ireland. It's not an EU organization. It's good for the EU, but it's an Irish passport.
Right.
And again, there's a link for the instructions. This requires less information. Basically, I sent in my FBR, my foreign birth registry certificate.
Right.
I had to send in my U.S. passport. And that was about it. And I think it was $115 or so, plus the overnight shipping fee. And it took about 3 months, and I had my European Irish passport.
Boy, that's pretty darn good, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know this was all back in 2006 and 2007. So
Mhm.
maybe a few of those dollar amounts or a month here, month there. I don't know what the queue is like, but yeah, that only took me a few months.
Boy, that sounds good. Do you have any other thoughts on the whole process and how it went for you?
I think it's just have some patience. Don't be daunted. It's a daunting process if you think about it, but once you get into it, it's very straightforward.
Boy, yeah, that sounds like it's something a lot of people could do. And of course, I think I go all the way back to great grandfather, so I'm going to have to find another way to do that. I should have done it when I had the opportunity back in the 70s, I think.
Yeah, I think it was easier back then. One other funny little thing I found when I found my birth certificate, it was actually signed by someone, Mabel Ireland. So there was a good omen.
And I think they probably arranged that. Knowing the folks, they thought that'd be a fitting signature. They found just the right person to do that. Hey, have you found anything new on the family since I talked to you last on your research, or is that pretty well set?
Well, it's never set. There's always another mystery. There's always another branch in the tree. I found 2 really interesting stories that I haven't been able to nail down. The task I wanted is to have every branch of my family defined when the first person came to this country.
Mm-hmm.
So with my father, it was easy because his father and mother. Done. Right? With my mother, her mom came over from Nova Scotia, so that was easy. It was only my mother, was a Brennan. Her grandfather came into this country from Ireland. So I managed to find both he and his wife. And so now I have every branch, the first entry into this country, which is great. But in doing that, I found a couple of more stories that are frustrating me.
Mm-hmm.
One is, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's what keeps us all going. It's just one good story after another can keep us interested in that family tree.
That's right. And so the Brennans, I found that in looking in some of my mother's old records, that the Brennan family Bible had been donated by her father's sister to Marquette University. And I contacted Marquette University archives, and they said, "Oh, we have about 200 Bibles that were donated." I was hoping to get to the bottom of why is it that it was significant enough, or they felt they should donate this family Bible from the 1800s.
Well,
That's
yeah.
where I have all the birth and death information for the folks that came from Ireland. Why did they donate that? Why didn't they keep it? What was significant about it? I don't know if I'll ever get to the bottom of that.
Boy, an official call from them to have things donated in a particular year when they had a campaign, or it was just they considered it historic enough? Maybe you got somebody real important in that Bible you haven't found yet.
It could be. And the other thing I found was Michael Brennan, who is the person who came over to this country. His wife came over from England. Her name was Grimwood, Maria Grimwood. And looking in her history, it appears, and I'm not sure if I can verify this, I have to do more work, that they were shipwrecked off Prince Edward Island and then stayed on Prince Edward Island for a few years before then coming down to the United States.
And what year was that about?
1830 to 1833. And it's funny, that's the same place that Michael Brennan came into, and it appears they met somewhere along the way, because then in Providence he's listed as like a 21-year-old, I guess, apprentice of her father, living in their house in Providence and working in the same business. And so I guess he was an apprentice. He married the daughter. So I just have to get down. When did they meet? Did they meet on the ship over? Did they meet in Providence? Was there really a shipwreck?
Well, I think you're well on a way to a mini series to appear on television now that they're doing so many new things on genealogy. It seems like one or two things every year comes up, especially over on the BBC side of it.
Yeah. It's just interesting because I like to take it from the angle of finding an interesting story in there, not just my grandmother's grandfather's so-and-so married this person on this date. Right?
Yeah, naming a date is just the start. Yeah, then you want to know what the real story is.
Yep, that's the fun part. It also is it's the real puzzle. And just when you think you hit the wall, that's when you find some little clue or some coincidence that opens up the door to get you to where you wanted to go.
Well, now, do you want to share any of your websites or your blog address on verbally here, so there's an audio record for those folks that may not even like to read?
Well, sure. And my blog is at sweeney.net, SWEENEY. There's the importance of spelling Sweeney correctly, .net. And I have quite a few blog postings on my genealogy research and my travels in Ireland, as well as other topics.
Boy, it's a good one, and I know this is going to help folks looking for their citizenship, dual citizenship. And you said you had quite a few hits. That's really one of your most popular blogs, didn't you?
Without a doubt, that entry on dual citizenship is far and away the most visited blog posting. I'm not claiming anyone reads my blog with any regularity, so I have a low expectation of that. But when I look at the statistics, every time I look, every day, there's someone that landed on my blog and they show you the searching that sent them there, that was searching for Irish citizenship, dual citizenship. And so and I've had quite a few comments on that one entry as well. So it's been a useful entry for folks looking into this topic.
Yeah, that's good. I know it's been a lot of questions here on that, gosh, for the last 10, 20 years. Just a lot of people are interested, and they just, so many of them don't take that first step. But, if they did, I think a lot more would get through, and we'd have a lot of fun with that. Well, is there anything else? Looks like we're just about to the end of it for this podcast. We're gonna put that right out at the first of the year, about 2 weeks after the holiday here. So it's going to be real good, and I bet you, I hope you get a bunch more hits after it comes out on my blog and the podcast.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's fun to get the hits. I don't expect much traffic at my little blog, but it's fun when it happens.
Oh, heck yes. Well, that's great, Bill. I appreciate talking to you for the second time, and if I ever get the time, I'm going to call you back again and see what's happening. You seem to be at the center of all the activity going on these days.
Okay, thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks. That's all for today, folks. Joseph, warm up those pipes. Remember, we have a broadcast series on Irish song and recitation, on local history of the Irish in America, and on 2,000 years of Irish history, as well as on the counties, and something special coming up on Irish language, I hope. We've got all that and more at our head school at irishroots.com. And we've been known to appear, exhibit, teach, and even sing for your special events. Be sure to book in advance if it's important, and write me at my American address at Irish Roots Cafe, Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri 64116. Leave a message by phone at 816-256-3360. Reach me on my webpage at irishroots.com. Skype me at the Irish Roots Cafe. Get me on MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, and Irish Central. Members foot the bill so they get first priority, but we're open to all. And by the way, a big thank you to all of our members. And away.